Welcome back, Exiles. My goal for this video is to make an approachable build guide for the Invoker Monk for new players. I am a new player myself, but luckily when I stream over on Twitch, I have PoE vets with thousands of hours. Some of them even have like 10,000 hours from PoE, and they share the knowledge with me, and I'm hoping to share with you. I get a lot of enjoyment from understanding how things work, especially with this type of game. I don't like just following build guides and just doing what someone tells me. I like to know why I'm doing it, and so that is my emphasis with these videos. If you just want the answer, I'm sorry, I cannot help you yet. Eventually I will get to the point of putting like a build planner, and you can just copy stuff if you want, but we are learning together, and that's the aim of this video for new players, including me. I'm going to cover the stats on loot and what you want to chase as an Invoker Monk. I'm going to go through skills for each phase. The early game, Act 1 to 3. The mid game, Act 5 to 6. That's the cruel mode. Support gems and the passive skill tree. The footage in the background is a mixture of those acts from my playtime over on stream, so you might see different bits and pieces. And we are eventually going to get to like where I'm at right now, which is infinite power charges and having the charge staff shooting out elemental damage all the time. Very, very fun, but I'm under no illusion that this is not the end game, so I'm not going to have a title, end game, massive DPS, big ding dong. We're not there yet. I can't wait to get there, but this is really for those early and mid games, and I'll put a link down below to some more veteran PoE players with endgame Invoker Monk builds to follow along if you want that content too. Cool, let's go. Do you have a loved one who's playing too much Path of Exile 2, or is it you that has not left your computer? Manscaped is here to help out with all those neck beards. The Chairman Pro package will take care of any facial hair degeneracy, the perfect gift this holiday. It has 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. The 4-blade foil will give you a super close shave, and no one will be able to tell you just pulled an all-nighter in PoE 2, or you just pop this off and you'll be able to put on the skin-safe stubble trimmer for more of a rugged look. Both options give a close, smooth, and comfortable shave with the Flex Adjust technology. Power Shave Gel is included in your package, as is the dermatologically tested Face Shave Soother Aftershave. The precision lock right here makes the blade head sit firm in 3 predefined positions, giving more control. And if you have time to shower, take the Chairman with you and shave in the shower, as it is waterproof. In the unfortunate scenario of having to leave your computer and actually travel, it has 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge and a travel lock. Min-max your life this holidays with the Chairman Pro package. Use promo code Myelin for 20% off your order plus free shipping, and join the 11 million people worldwide who trust Manscaped. Okay, let's start with some very basic information about the loot. I feel like people skip over this very quickly in build videos, and some really important things you should understand. Firstly, you can press Alt on your gear if you don't know, and you'll see that there is an item level. And you'll also see, you'll get a pop-up here about prefixes and suffixes and what we call the tier levels. So what this means is, as the item level increases, you actually have a greater chance of getting higher tier mods, or affixes, prefixes and suffixes. The higher the number tier, the better they are. So for example, this is a tier 4 for accuracy, and so this stat range is higher than a tier 1 for accuracy. Similarly, I've got a tier 4 here for physical damage, so this stat range is 93, well, the amount is 93% increase in physical damage. Pretty nice. So what you want to be doing is, if you are getting stuck on a section, go through and have a look at your gear and see if you've been holding onto something that has a low item level, and then start having a look at the tier levels, because they might be quite low. For me, I've actually been doing this. I've been hanging on to this for quite a while because it was a well-rolled quarterstaff, because it had a flat physical damage and a percentage increased damage. And a very easy way you can increase your gear is by buying items. Like for example, I just had a look here. This is a level 51 item, and you can see this has got the lowest is a tier 3, tier 5s, and tier 6s. Got a tier 6 flat physical damage on this, and a really nice attack speed of tier 5. So if you are getting stuck, have a look at your item level, have a look at the tier levels, and then see if you need to swap anything out by using a vendor, buy your gear. You can use the one that just shows you what it is, or you can take a random punt and go to a vendor that sells the random gear. So I think it's fit in this area.
Take a punt.
and you can get magics and you can get rares. This is actually how I got this role originally. It was just a random gear, which is quite nice. Of course, you can just get gear randomly dropping out in the wild. As the monster level increases, the item level that they drop also increases. And I'm pretty sure it's the same as PoE 1, whereas magics give a +1 to item, like destroying a magic enemy will give you +1 on the item level, and destroying rare enemies will give you a +2. Let me know if that's correct or not, but that's how it was from my understanding of PoE 1. Okay, now that you understand some of the basics of the loot, what do you actually want to roll on your gear? Starting with the weapon, you actually want to look at getting physical damage. And this almost seems counterintuitive with this elemental monk that's shooting all these different elemental damages. But the reason why physical damage is a good stat to build into is a lot of your skills will convert physical damage into whatever element that skill uses. So for the Storm Wave, it's converting 80% of it into lightning damage. And if you're using, a cold skill, it's very similar. It will convert X amount of percentage of physical damage into cold damage. And often with most of these builds, you're going to be combining probably 2 elements, and the more elements you combine, it actually has some benefits later on in like the mid and the end game. So building into physical gives you a lot of flexibility, and this is why I've held on to this quarterstaff for so long. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, well, what prefixes and suffixes should you be going for? Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like prefixes and suffixes are just categories of mods that can roll. They're just a pool of mods that can be in there. So certain mods are in the prefix category and certain mods are in the suffix category. And when you have a rare item, you can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, and you can see that when you hold down Alt. So I go for a flat physical damage. So this has a flat physical damage, adds 8 to 15 physical damage. And then if you compare that with a percentage increase, and this is why I've kept this for so long, as a 93% increased physical damage, and I've got a tier 3 and a tier 4 for that. So this is actually really good synergy for me to really boost up my physical damage with this quarterstaff. Then for the suffixes, I really do like attack speed. This is a great thing for the monk, especially when you start doing DPS with the bell, which we'll get to. But it's not awful when you first start off to have other things in that suffix, just like a stat like intelligence or dexterity. This can be a really big power jump for you because it opens up other build possibilities. However, it is a double-edged sword, because what happens is you become dependent on that 15 intelligence, and then when you try to swap it out, it nukes one of your skills that's using intelligence. So this, it's got 46 intelligence on it. Maybe I don't make the 46 intelligence anymore. I'm like, oh my god, then you got to start swapping everything around. However, the plus side is it might boost you up enough to use a new skill that might get you through some content. The other thing that is potentially good to have on your quarterstaff is a little bit of cold damage. You do need some cold damage later on in the build. It doesn't have to come from your quarterstaff, because there are some nodes that will give you cold damage like globally. However, if you get some cold damage on your quarterstaff, that is also good. In general, applying more ailments or more elemental damage that applies an ailment with the monk is going to improve your DPS as you progress through the game. Then don't forget, you can stack runes in here. So remember that when you go to the salvage bench, you can click on this, and if you have items you've picked up with sockets on them, like rune sockets, you just click on them and you'll get the materials. You collect enough materials and you can add your own rune sockets to your gear, and adding your rune sockets to your gear is like this, and then you can slot in the runes you've collected. So in this case, I've just added more physical damage. There is one other affix that I have seen mentioned, and that is percentage, let me get the wording right, percentage increased elemental damage with attacks. I'll leave a link to Cyrobe's YouTube channel where I saw this, and apparently that is also a pretty good role to go for on your quarterstaffs. Okay, so what are you looking for on your armor? By nature, the monk is spec'd into dexterity and intellect, and when you find dexterity intellect pieces, they're going to start rolling evasion and energy shields on them. That being said, early game, I think it's completely fine to equip gear that has it's a strength rolled and has just armor on it, just to get you through, just to increase your armor as you go through like Act 1. But as you progress through the game, you're going to have to start speccing really into energy and evasion, so your dex intellect pieces of gear. And especially as you get towards the end game, I think I'm actually going to start transitioning to evasion. There are some stuff in your Ascendacy passive skill tree that actually requires you to have evasion, so I'm probably going to start going more towards evasion now as well. With that, all that said, the number one thing that I do prioritize on gear is to have max life. So this piece here has a tier 4 max life because we're not speccing into strength, and the strength stat will give you life. We're pretty squishy as the monk. It's very cool gameplay because we can have great damage, but we are a little bit squishy. So I do prioritize getting max life at a high tier on my gear. Then I go for a flat, well, I'm going to look at a flat increase in evasion. And then if we get a percentage increase in evasion or energy shields, you can definitely get a flat increase in shields as well if you're earlier on in the game. So yeah, health, then evasion, shields, and then percentage increase, evasion and shields. And then for the suffixes, this is like the real big thing that's going to start hitting you hard once you get to the cruel mode, is really prioritizing resistances. So these boots have great suffixes on them because they've got 2 tier 4 resistances, got fire resistance and lightning resistance. And you want to build up your resistances as you go through the campaign, because this is the stuff that really starts to hit you hard if you neglect it. So my prefixes, I go for my life, my energy shield, and my evasion, probably skewed towards evasion as I'm getting towards endgame now. And then my suffixes, trying to build up my resistances. There are a couple of exceptions to that. You can get fire damage on gloves, and just adding an extra element to your build can improve DPS, because if you apply more ailments with a certain skill, it actually increase your DPS. So you can look out for some fire damage on gloves. And then also a lot of people recommend movement speed on the boots, just because these maps are huge and anything that gets you through them quicker can be really handy. So you see if you can find some movement speed on your boots as well. All right, let's talk about skills, specifically early on, like Act 1, what can make this a little bit easier, because the monk is slow to get going until you start unlocking Tempest Bell. And not even that, once you unlock Tempest Bell and Tempest Flurry, then you start seeing some actual real DPS. But before that, it is a little bit slow going, and you are an evasive monk running away and trying to freeze enemies or shock them. So what I would recommend is Glacial Cascade. So this shoots ice along the floor, remembering that the final spike does more damage, and ideally you want to freeze your enemies, and this final spike will do more damage on that frozen enemy. And then using Frozen Locust to sort of do this backstep and freeze enemies as they approach you. Now the big thing for me that I think would have helped me in Act 1 if someone told me, is I would run these 2 skills and then pick something from Elemental or Occult for crowd control. And more specifically, my priority now that I've used it a bunch, would actually be Frost Bomb, which is a level 1 skill. And the reason why this is so huge, it actually lowers the cold resistance of enemies. So this has really good synergy with your Glacial and your Frozen Locust. You do a backstep with Frozen Locust, put that down, dump a Frost Bomb on top of that to make them more susceptible to cold damage, and then go to town with your Glacial Cascade. Really, really nice combo, and I think this would actually carry you for a really long time, and is probably your best damage option until you open up some other skills. I also would round out the early game with some sort of crowd control, specifically when you get rushed. This was a big issue for me in Act 1 boss, just dealing with ads that just push you very quickly. The monk has a way to deal with ads, but it takes a little bit of setup, specifically between Killing Palm and Falling Thunder. Such a cool move, but it requires setup. So you have to use Killing Palm to produce power charges, and it's like a finisher move, and you get a power charge, and then you use Falling Thunder to basically wipe the map. Pretty tough if enemies just spawn in and they mob you immediately like they do in the Act 1 boss. And this would have really helped me, either Ice Nova to deal with them and freeze them, or something like Bone Cage, that is at level 3 though, to just stop enemies pushing you. So some sort of crowd control. And remember, you can use Elemental and Occult without any weapon requirements. These are just intellect requirements to start using, and that would be my biggest tip for advice for the monk early game. Cascades, Frozen Locust, and then supplement it with something from Elemental and Occult to deal some CC, and especially Frost Bomb to make enemies more susceptible to cold damage. I think that would carry you for most of that act. Okay, the support gems for the things I just recommended. Just a quick note on support gems. I found that I had a lot more skill gems than support gems, so I would encourage experimentation with your skill gems first. Unlock the stuff specific to the monk, unlock the element and occult stuff, and see what you like first. And then once you have a good combo, then start unlocking your support gems, because I found that that was probably the more of a barricade to progressing than just getting the skill. I find they give you heaps of skills, you can experiment heaps and just try whatever you like, but support gems are a little bit more rare early on. And this is what I use. There's a lot of variation for what people recommend here, and I kind of need one of those build guides up to really test DPS values for this. But in general, these are about freezing and then bursting that freeze. So for the Glacial Cascade skill, I have the support gem of Cold Infusion and Glaciation. For Frozen Locust, I was using Deep Freeze and Magnified Effect. And then for Frost Bomb skill, I was using Second Wind. It's great to put Strip Away on there when you get access to it, but this is a level 2 skill, so you won't have access to it straight away. Okay, let's move on to the next time you see some sort of big power jump, and that's when you unlock Tempest Bell and Tempest Flurry, and this is going to be your main boss DPS, and even ad clear for quite some time. So the way this works is you need to build up charges or like combo uses to actually use Tempest Bell, so you can't just plop it down anywhere. You've got to build up these combos to use it, and a really quick way to do that is with Tempest Flurry. So this just starts swirling your quarterstaff around and builds it up because it's a combo in itself. It has normal strikes, a third strike, and a fourth strike. So if you do one Tempest Flurry, you'll then be able to use your bell. You drop the bell, and then you use Tempest Flurry on the bell. So you swing your staff around, drop the bell, and then use the Tempest Flurry on the bell because it's got a really nice attack speed on it. The important thing to note with the bell is that you deal 30% more damage per ailment afflicting the bell, right? So the more damage types you have, the more likely you're going to deal 30% more damage. So these ailments include Ignite, Chill, Freeze, Shock, and Electrocute. So because you're hitting it with Tempest Flurry, which is lightning damage, you're going to get Shock on it pretty easy, so that's 30%. Now this is where you kind of want a little bit of cold damage. If you remember back before, I said with the quarterstaff, if you get a little bit of cold damage on there, that is great, because then cold will help you inflict chill and potentially build up to freeze. And you are inflicting it on the bell. And if you get it triggered on the bell, you'll notice it because the shockwaves will have that ailment on them. And like if you get freeze on the bell itself freezes. So you'll be able to notice. But these are 30% damage jump every time you do it. If you don't have cold damage on your quarterstaff, there is a node once you ascend that can give you some extra cold damage just on top of all your damage without having anything on your armor, and that can help add an extra ailment to it, which we'll talk about in the passive tree skill section. Okay, now we're on to the mid game, and the big jump for me was Stormwave and Charge Staff. So Charge Staff is the ability you see where you're shooting like lightning or like these lightning shock waves from your staff as you swing it around. And the thing is, you just activate this with power charges, and then you spam Tempest Flurry, and while you're doing Tempest Flurry, it will shoot these elemental shock waves, or these lightning shock waves actually, from the staff itself. Now there's a bit of combination here to actually build up power charges really consistently, and I'll show you what I'm doing. It requires Stormwave, Charge Staff, and something from your passive tree. Now if you don't have these requirements yet, you likely will be using Killing Palm to generate your power charges. This is like almost like a finisher move where an enemy's low on life, you teleport to them and you finish them off, and that will give you a power charge. But once you're able to go to your passive skill tree and find the resonance node, you can kind of have an infinite loop for generating power charges. So what this says is the way that you get power charges now, you gain power charges instead of frenzy charges. So it completely changes your build to needing frenzy charges to generate power charges. And then what you do is you use a buff called Combat Frenzy, and this will generate frenzy charges when you freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy. So you've probably got freeze down pat. You can use your freeze options that we have from early game to freeze. Electrocute is a little bit harder, and what you have to do, and this is what I do anyway, is I place on the electrocute support, and what this does is any lightning damage can inflict electrocute. So I can use Storm Wave, I can shoot electric damage across the ground, and this has a chance to electrocute, so I can build power charges from distance, and then I activate my charge staff using those power charges, and then I use Tempest Flurry to just destroy everything. Because you get these frenzy charges with freezing or electrocuting, you can actually generate them off the bell as well. This is what I do for boss damage. I have to put the bell down first, so I usually use Tempest Flurry, build the bell combo, drop the bell, and then getting ailments proccing on the bell is just really easy for whatever reason. So I always find that I will get a power charge just from hitting the bell with cold damage, because I've got some flat cold damage on there, and then you can start the proper DPS cycle. The generation of power charges becomes even easier once you unlock Shattering Palm. This essentially allows you to teleport to an enemy, you palm strike them, and it applies like a crystal, but it has huge 100% freeze build up on it, plus added cold damage. So often you'll punch a group of enemies, you'll get a freeze, that will then trigger the frenzy, which triggers the power charge. So you essentially punch a group of enemies, you get a power charge, now your charge staff is ready to roll, and you just keep cycling that through. You keep teleporting to enemies, punching them, getting a freeze off, powering your charge staff, and just rolling through enemies that way. Okay, so the support gems I have for the build I just spoke about. Well, firstly, I haven't really spoken about Unbound Avatar. This is an Ascension skill that you will unlock. Essentially what happens is you build up Unbound Fury by dealing elemental ailments up to 100. You'll see this little icon up the top when you build it up. Once you build it up to 100, it's like a super, and you can pop it, and you do a huge amount of elemental damage and elemental ailment build up too. It's your like avatar state where you're just doing huge amounts of elemental damage. It's very nice. You build it up and you pop it for your DPS and then smack away on the bell. And I just have persistence on there to make it last a little bit longer because it is quite short-lived. Okay, for my Storm Wave, like I said previously, I have Electrocute on there so I can build up power charges from distance. This will help me build up power charges in a very safe manner. Then Lightning Infusion and Coursing Current. Previously, like, I think this is probably the aspect of my builds I can improve on. Please let me know if you have better suggestions. But it's also part of the game. It's the fun part of the game, working out what support items to put on it. Anywho, Charge Staff, I have Lightning Penetration. I have a Perpetual Charge on it. So this has a chance to not consume charges. So really, really handy. You can pop your Charge Staff and potentially save yourself a power charge. And then Primal Armament. For the Frost Bomb, I have on Second Wind, so this lowers the cooldown on it, and then also Strip Away as well, which is going to increase our exposure, basically make enemies more less resistant to cold damage. Now, Shattering Palm, I'm actually out of support items, experimenting a little bit too much, but for Shattering Palm, it would be great to get Ice Bite for it, and I've also seen a lot of people put Blind on Shattering Palm too, just to help out in case you don't wipe a group of ads. For my Tempest Bell, this is not optimal yet, and I've got some changes I want to make to it, but currently I'm just running Overpower on this to build up some more stuns for when I'm doing DPS on a boss, Magnified Effects, so greater area of effect, and Conduction, more chances to shock. I think a lot of people run for this Rage build up. So what you can do is run Rage, and you build up Rage with this one, but I don't have access yet to the tier 3 support skills, but then you can consume that rage that you build up by hitting the bell and deal an extra 35% more damage. So I suspect that's why people put this on the bell. For my Tempest Flurry, I have Martial Tempo, so I can attack faster and hit the bell even faster. Inspiration, just reduce the cost of it because I pretty much spam it the entire time. And then Innovate on there for extra lightning damage. I hadn't mentioned my other buffs yet, but I'd also run Herald of Thunder. This was bugged previously. It's no longer bugged anymore. They patched it, but I actually don't have any support gems on that one where I'm at. And then for Combat Frenzy, this is a really good one to run Profusion. So it gives you a chance to generate an additional charge. So this helps with charge generation, power charge generation. Okay, let's talk about the passive skill tree. Please don't copy this. I know I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to PoE. This got me through the campaign very easily, and I'm pretty happy with how it's going in Cruel. However, it's not going to be a good end game. I've got lots of things I experimented with and lots of mistakes I made along the way, so I have plenty of info to share with you what I think is valuable to go for in the early and mid game. And then also I will put some YouTube links down below if you want to have a look at what an end game monk build looks like, because nearly every build I've seen starts progressing over to this big node here, which has a lot of quarterstaff skill. Well, it's all quarterstaff skills rather than heading up this way. Cool. So things to note. Firstly, I think if you just start the game, building into crit rate or crit damage is a huge mistake. I did it because I thought, oh, great. However, you're really not going to feel the effects of these early nodes until much later in the game. It can be a little bit deceiving because you think, oh, 15% increased critical damage and another 15% increased critical damage. Oh, great. Now I've got 30% increased critical damage, or 10% increased crit rate and another 10% here. Like, oh, great. I've got 20% critical hit chance. That's really good early on. It's not quite like that. What it is increasing your crit hit chance on your weapon. So I've already got a 10% crit hit chance. So this 10% increase is only increasing that number by 10%. And if you saw my previous video, these stack additively. So what you would do if you have both of these nodes of 10% increase, you would take 10 times 1.2. You would go 10 times 1.2, and that is my new crit rate, 12. So you really don't feel the effects of this stuff unless you know exactly what you're doing when it comes to crit rate, and you know which path you're building, and you're really stacking everything into it. And that's why in the end game, you'll see these builds have crit rate and crit damage because they're going in the most efficient way. So early on, I actually just go straight for as soon as I respec into just attack damage and skill speed, a much better time. I actually came back and unlocked some of the lightning damage mods here. Once I got off Act 1 and started using a lot more lightning, I came back and unlocked some of these. Don't worry about this. This is just experimentation. I wouldn't do that. This node here, I do think is definitely worth going for. This is like a power charge node. The power within, it's called a notable. You can find notables by just typing in notable. So if you type in notable up in the top right, you'll see everything flashing, and this will give you some direction to where you want to go, so you can have a look at notables. And the other thing you want to look for is keystones. So if you type in keystone, that is how you see the resonance keystone here. And these are like build changing aspects of the passive skill tree. So like this resonance, you know, the way that you now generate power charges is through frenzy charges. So you have to change your whole build to generate frenzy charges to get power charges. But when you're first starting off, you can prioritize having a look at notables and then having a look at keystones and start working your way towards them. Cool. So this notable, the power within, I really like, and I really like all the ones around it. It increases your power charge duration. This allows you to basically generate a power charge and just hold on to it, because it eventually does expire. So you can hold onto it between enemies and then activate it when you need it. I really like it. The second thing is, I do like this whole area. I haven't seen any builds use this, probably because they're doing crit rate and crit damage builds, but like early and even mid game, I really like all the elemental damage I get here from cold damage and lightning damage. They're the primary skills that I'm using. I really enjoy that too. Then making my way to resonance. And I probably, rather than going over here, I probably should spec into this attack speed here, because that would be really nice. And also a little bit of defense, because I'm now finding I'm a little bit squishy. And hopefully you enjoy just doing this yourself. The way that I'm playing the game is I play, and when I reach a barricade, I blockade and I can't progress. I look at what I've done wrong, and then I respec and try to fill in some of the gaps in my build. I find that really fun. you might not care. You might just want the answer. Sorry, I don't have that for you. But I do really like this keystone for resonance. I feel like I have power charges all the time, and it's very nice. As for your Ascendancy, I went down this path here, and there's a couple good reasons for that. The first is this I Am the Blizzard. You gain 10% of damage as extra cold damage. This is really useful if you don't have any cold damage on your quarterstaff. This is giving you a flat, cold damage to all your attacks. And this is really useful because when you hit the bell, you want to be applying as many ailments as possible. And because we're using Tempest Flurry on the bell, which is lightning, this actually adds cold damage during Tempest Flurry. So if I open up Tempest Flurry here, have a look, you'll see that obviously it's got huge lightning damage because that's the skill it is, but I also have some cold damage, and I don't have any cold damage on any of my items here that's adding it. I believe that I'm just purely getting that from this node right here. You get some nice increases in elemental damage, and then you get like the avatar skill. Go into the avatar state, don't die, or the Fire Nation will win. Now, if you remember back to the beginning of the video, I said that you might start wanting to spec into evasion as you get towards the end game. And that's primarily because of this node here that says physical damage reduction from armor is based on your combined armor and evasion rating. So building into evasion is going to help with this node here. And on the way there, you actually gain spirit from your evasion rating here. You also gain spirit from your shield rating too. So you do want some shield, or at least you're getting value out of shield as well, because you can generate more spirits. And this is kind of like end game stuff where people have heaps of buffs on because they've got a really good body armor piece that has energy or evasion on it, and they're getting a ton of spirit from that. And then spirit allows you to have a bunch of buffs on. And there you have it. That's my monk build for early and mid game. It is incredibly fun class to play. It really does give you that power fantasy of being this elemental avatar and shooting lightning and ice and other things. And I really, really do enjoy it. Hopefully it helped you out. And if you'd like to support the channel and cannot think of a comment, you can just leave the word monk. As usual, it's been a pleasure. This is Myelin Games. Peace.